My husband left me days before I gave birth to comfort his D*INGX. His mom helped me file for divorce, then I found out they kissed. I'm stuck in a really messy situation right now, and honestly, I don't even know where to begin. Any advice or perspective would mean a lot. My husband Jeremy, he's 35, and I'm 32, have been together for 5 years and married for 2. We originally met at work, so I didn't know much about his life before me. As we got more serious, we both opened up and shared that we'd each only had one meaningful relationship after college. In my case, I was with my ex for about 4 years, 3 during college and another year after graduation. We ended things because of personal differences, and once it was over, we completely cut contact. By the time I met Jeremy, that breakup was well behind me, nearly 5 years in the past. Jeremy's story was a little different. When we started dating, he was still on friendly terms with his ex, who we'll call Valerie. She was his high school sweetheart, and they'd been together from the age of 16 all the way through college. Like me, he said they had broken up 5 years before he met me. According to him, Valerie had taken a job offer in Australia to advance her career, and he wasn't up for doing long distance. They gave it a shot for a few months but eventually decided to split because it just wasn't sustainable. Since they were part of the same friend group, they stayed in touch and remained friends. At first, I didn't see a problem with that. I mean, I trusted him. But about 9 months into our relationship, he invited me to a New Year's Eve dinner to meet his friends for the first time, and that's where things shifted. Valerie was there. I hadn't known she'd be, and honestly, I wasn't prepared for it. Up until that point, Jeremy had only spoken positively about her. He described her as this laid-back, friendly person, so I wasn't feeling threatened. But the moment I met her, something just felt off. Her vibe toward me didn't match Jeremy's glowing description at all. Instead of being welcoming, she started tossing out these sharp little digs in front of everyone. And the worst part? Everyone just brushed it off like it was her quirky sense of humor. For example, she commented that I looked nothing like my pictures and then said she didn't think I was Jeremy's type since he usually liked tall blondes, neither of which I am, but she is. Everyone laughed it off, like it was just a joke. Then she jokingly referred to me as her successor and said she should probably train me on how to keep Jeremy happy. I tried to convince myself she was just being weird and maybe this really was how she joked around with people. But the final straw was when we were drinking and she raised a toast, saying how happy she was that Jeremy had finally moved on. At first, I thought she meant well, until she added that if she hadn't moved to Australia, I probably wouldn't even be there. That got awkward fast. Nobody laughed, though she tried to smooth it over by laughing at herself until others joined in just to kill the tension. That night made it pretty clear she wasn't over Jeremy. And I wasn't okay with that. As soon as we got home, I told him straight up I didn't want her talking to me again, and I wasn't comfortable with their friendship anymore. She hadn't just been a little off, she was flat out disrespectful to me all night. I made it very clear where my boundaries were. I'd dealt with stuff like this in the past, and I wasn't about to let it slide again. To his credit, Jeremy actually seemed to get it. He told me he noticed how strange she was acting, too, and said he'd cut ties with her because he didn't want any friction between us. That was the end of it, at least, that's what I thought. He told me he blocked her and never brought her up again after that. His friends didn't mention her either, probably because he told them how I felt about her. Things were smooth after that. We got married, life moved forward, and I honestly thought that chapter was closed. Then came last week. I'm pregnant actually, my due date was last Sunday. Today's Thursday. So yeah, I was days away from giving birth when Jeremy suddenly told me he had to leave. Not for work. Not for family. But for Valerie. Apparently, she had some kind of emergency, and she needed him. So just 2 days before my due date, he packed up and left and didn't come back until last night. We had a massive fight when he returned. I was livid. I thought he had blocked her completely. I had no idea they were still talking. That's when he admitted that while he had blocked her before, she reached out to him using a different number. He said she was desperate and needed someone. According to him, Valerie had just been diagnosed with stage 2 brain cancer. I tried to understand. I really did. It's awful news, and I get that it probably hit him hard. But I was on the verge of giving birth to his child, and he just left. He told me she wasn't dying immediately, and I couldn't help but think, so why couldn't he wait just a few days? He could have been there to hold my hand during labor, meet our baby for the first time. But no, he said he had to go the moment he got the news. I told him he was being ridiculous for choosing to leave me alone in this condition. His response? He said due dates weren't exact, that I probably had another week or so. Then he told me to deal with it and left for the airport right after. He didn't even finish the conversation. He knew I didn't have anyone here. My family lives in Iowa. I was completely depending on him. After he left, I tried calling him over and over again, but his phone was off. In total panic, I ended up calling his mom. She's always been kind to me, so I explained what was going on, sobbing the whole time. She came over right away and started trying to reach him too, but of course, his phone stayed off. She stayed with me that whole day while I cried nonstop. Between the betrayal, the stress, and the pregnancy hormones, I was a mess. We didn't hear from him until the following day. And even then, he didn't call, he just sent a short text to both of us saying he'd be back soon and hoped to make it before the baby came. He apologized and told me he'd accept whatever punishment I thought was fair once he got back. He told me he had no choice but to be there for Valerie because she didn't have anyone else in Australia. Her family couldn't fly and her dad was apparently very sick too, so she was leaning on Jeremy as the only person she had. He said she was counting on him, and he felt like he had to be there for her while she processed the diagnosis. But that explanation didn't sit right with me. In fact, it made everything worse. The idea that he prioritized an old flame over his pregnant wife was absolutely infuriating. Yes, I understand that cancer is serious, but I was about to go into labor. That's not exactly a casual event either. And what exactly did he think he could do for her in that moment, miraculously cure her? No, he couldn't. What he could have done was stay home and support the person who was literally carrying his child. My mother-in-law felt the same. After reading the message he sent me, she looked me straight in the eyes and asked if I wanted to leave him. I didn't even have to think about it. I said yes. She didn't hesitate. She reached out to her lawyer right away and got the ball rolling. He started drafting the divorce paperwork, along with an agreement to terminate Jeremy's parental rights. My mother-in-law told me that if Jeremy managed to get back before the due date, then I could still decide whether to go through with the divorce or talk things out first. But if he didn't make it in time, then my choice was pretty clear. I understood where she was coming from. She'd raised Jeremy all by herself. His dad had completely bailed on them, never even showed up after he was born. So she had done everything alone, and she was determined not to let me go through that same kind of abandonment. She promised me she'd help make sure Jeremy paid child support and that I wouldn't be left stranded like she was. She stayed with me the entire week. We both stopped trying to reach Jeremy. Then Monday came, and I went into labor. While I was in pain and everything was starting to move quickly, she still tried to call him, to give him the chance to at least know what was happening, but again, no answer. She didn't even bother texting him. She figured if he hadn't picked up by then, it was pointless. Thankfully, my parents had flown in the day before. Total blessing, honestly. They were with me in the delivery room, and my mother-in-law too. But even with their support, I felt Jeremy's absence like a punch to the gut. And in that moment, I just knew no matter what happened after, there was no way I could ever look at him the same again. Just 3 hours after giving birth, while still exhausted and barely able to hold a pen, I signed the divorce paperwork. I asked the lawyer to move forward with filing it. I looked down at my baby girl, and I realized that if I wanted to be the kind of mom she deserved, I had to take care of myself first. And staying with someone who made it crystal clear that Valerie came before me, that wasn't taking care of myself. So I didn't even bother calling Jeremy to tell him the baby had arrived. I just stayed home with my parents and my mother-in-law. My folks are flying back tomorrow, so then it'll just be me and her here. I explained my decision to everyone, and they were all supportive. Especially because Jeremy never even tried to reach out again, not even a message, despite promising me he'd return before the due date. He just stayed with Valerie for a week like nothing else mattered. Then, late last night, he finally came back. When I opened the door, he immediately pulled me into a hug, but I pushed him away. I told him I didn't want anything to do with him anymore. My mother-in-law heard the commotion and walked in. She didn't waste a second, marched right up to him, threw the paperwork in his face, and told him to get out of the house. She didn't care where he went. All she cared about was giving me peace and quiet, especially after everything I'd been through. She told him flat out that I'd already signed the divorce papers and that he needed to sign off on giving up his parental rights. He just stood there, stunned, for what felt like forever. At that point, I left the room. My mother-in-law was right, I was still recovering physically, and seeing him had shaken me more than I'd expected. I needed space. I didn't want to fall back into any emotional trap just because he looked hurt. Then I heard the shouting. He'd started yelling at his mom. I stayed out of it, rocking my daughter in the next room. Not long after, I heard him calling my name loudly, saying I should at least let him see his child, that I owed him that. And that word owed lit a fire in me. I gently placed my daughter in her crib, walked back out, and told him straight up that I didn't owe him a damn thing. He had chosen to leave me at the most vulnerable point of my life. He'd abandoned me just days before our daughter was born. And I was only okay because of his mother. Otherwise, who knows what could have happened. So no, I didn't know him anything. I told him our daughter was asleep, and I didn't want her disturbed. He needed to leave, and we could talk more in the morning. He left eventually, tears in his eyes. Before walking out, he tried to get one more word in, but I stepped back and told him I was done. We all went to sleep after that. But the next morning, he came back. That's when I finally said the words. I told him it was over. It had ended the second he decided Valerie's crisis mattered more than his own family. There was nothing he could say now to fix it. My mother-in-law was there, but I'd asked her not to get involved. This part one had to handle myself. And when I said it was over, he broke down. Started sobbing and begging me to change my mind. My mother-in-law grabbed the baby and left the house so she wouldn't hear any of that yelling. Jeremy kept insisting that Valerie had made it sound like she was literally dying. That she had no one else, and he was just trying to be there for her. That nothing physical or romantic happened, it was all just emotional support. But I wasn't there, was I? I couldn't verify any of it. So I told him it didn't matter anymore. He got desperate, saying even if I did want a divorce, I shouldn't go through with removing his parental rights. That it was too extreme. And if I did, he'd have no choice but to fight for custody. He even admitted he probably wouldn't win, he hadn't been there for the birth, and we could absolutely use that against him. On top of that, she was just a newborn. She needed her mother a lot more than some absent dad. Jeremy kept begging me to give him just one more shot. He said that despite everything, all he really wanted was a family. Eventually, he did leave that night, but not before asking me to think it over. And now I'm sitting here, more unsure than ever. This isn't some small decision, it's life-changing, and it affects more than just me. So before I go all the way through with it, I need to be absolutely sure I'm doing the right thing. I asked myself, was I wrong for deciding to divorce my husband and asking him to give up parental rights to our daughter because he skipped her birth to go be with his ex, who claimed to be dying? Update 1. I've made my decision, I'm following through with the divorce. That part is settled. But when it comes to custody, I'm still weighing my options. It's been 4 days since I first shared my story, and Jeremy has come to the house every single day since, pleading with me, apologizing, doing everything he can to get me to forgive him. And honestly, every time he shows up, it gets a little harder to slam the door in his face. But I remind myself I have to do this. For me, for my daughter, for our peace. Thank God for my mother-in-law. She's been by my side through everything. My parents had to fly home just 2 days after the birth, but she stepped up in a huge way. She even moved in with me long-term because she knows I'll need all the help I can get. I told her plainly, no matter what happens with Jeremy, she'll always be welcome to see her granddaughter. That door will never close to her. I've even asked her for advice about custody, but she's left it in my hands. She said she trusts me to make the right call, just like I did with the divorce. Still, it's not easy. Not when Jeremy keeps showing up and looking so broken. A part of me wants to just forgive him and try again. But then I remember how little he cared about my feelings during my pregnancy. He knew how sensitive the Valerie situation was for me, he knew, and he still left anyway. And now, I can't even be sure they weren't still talking all along. I don't trust a word that comes out of his mouth anymore. His apologies haven't changed once. It's always the same speech, nothing happened, he was just trying to help a friend in need, it was all innocent. And every single time, I have to tell him again that none of that matters anymore. The damage is done. I've made my decision, and I'm moving on without him. It breaks my heart, but this is reality now. Update 2. A few days ago, I said I was unsure about filing for full custody. But now, I've made up my mind. Jeremy showed up to apologize 5 days in a row, same routine, same story. Then, just like that, he disappeared. No visits. No messages. I thought maybe he finally realized that I wasn't going to change my mind. I was even a little relieved. I figured I could finally clear my head and think without the pressure. But I was wrong. He didn't back off, he just passed the baton to other people. Suddenly, my phone started lighting up with texts from his friends, all his friends. Not just his current group, but people from high school, college, even random acquaintances from years ago. It felt coordinated, like he'd written some sort of copy-paste script and told them all to guilt-trip me. Like this was some weird online petition and I was the villain who needed to be cancelled. At first, I started blocking people left and right. But they just made new accounts. Same messages, over and over. And look, I'm still physically and emotionally recovering from giving birth. I'm sleep-deprived, overwhelmed, trying to adjust to life with a newborn. This is the last thing I need. If Jeremy actually cared about me or his daughter, he wouldn't be letting this happen. He'd step in and tell them to back off. But clearly, he doesn't care about anyone but himself. And after all this, I know for sure I'm filing for full custody. He still has the paperwork to sign away his rights. If he refuses, my lawyer is ready. We're moving forward no matter what. The messages I've been getting? They're not kind. And I know Jeremy wrote that template himself. His words were all over it. Honestly, they told me more about how he truly sees me than any of his apologies ever did. One sentence in particular hit me like a slap in the face. "We never expected you to be the type of person who would use her own child as a weapon to punish her partner and play mind games like this." Is that really what he thinks I'm doing? Does he genuinely believe I'm using our daughter to punish him? If that's the case, then he has no idea how love, marriage, or parenting actually work. And he certainly doesn't know me. That line hurt more than I expected. It also made my decision easier. When I showed the texts to my mother-in-law, she was furious. She wanted to call Jeremy right away and chew him out, but I asked her not to. It just isn't worth the energy. Even if we tried to call him out for it, he'd just flat out deny it. But it was so obvious. All the messages I was getting were practically identical, clearly written from the same script, and I have no doubt he was the one who put it together. What frustrates me the most is not even the fact that he involved his friends, it's that he actually thought it would work. Like, did he really think that having a flood of people I barely know harass me with guilt trip messages would magically change my mind? These people aren't my friends. I don't have any emotional ties to them, and I've never been close with any of them. So why would I care what they think of me? They can judge me all they want. It doesn't make a difference. I guess he figured that if enough voices echoed the same message, I'd eventually crack under the pressure. But if that's the case, then he never really understood who I am. I don't fold when things get hard. I didn't back down when he was coming to my door every day, pleading and apologizing, because deep down I knew letting him back into my life would be a mistake. It wouldn't help either of us, and it definitely wouldn't be in the best interest of our daughter. Sure, it hurt. Of course it did. But I stuck to my decision because I know who I am, and I know what I stand for. And frankly, after being in a relationship with me for as long as he was, you'd think he'd know that too. But clearly, he doesn't. And the more time that passes, the more I realize that walking away was absolutely the right move. So no, it doesn't matter how many people he recruits to message me. Even if every single person he's ever met in his life starts blowing up my phone, I'm not budging. In fact, his little stunt with the message chain only made me feel more certain that I'm doing what's best. And the truth is, as long as I have the support of the people I love, the ones who actually matter, I don't need to justify my choices to anyone else. Update 3. The legal side of things is finally moving forward. In just a couple of days, the divorce and custody proceedings will begin. Jeremy has agreed not to fight the divorce itself, but he is asking for some level of custody. We'll see how that plays out. I'm open to discussing it, because I'm not out here trying to be vindictive. I don't hate him, I just don't trust him. That's why I'm thinking of waiting until our daughter is a little older, maybe a couple of years, before I'd consider sharing custody. It's something we'll be negotiating, but for now, I feel really good about the choices I've made. Oddly enough, a big part of that clarity came yesterday, when I got a message from Valerie. Yep. Out of nowhere, she reached out. She started by saying she never meant to wreck my home and that she just needed anyone, to be there for her while she was sick. Since her parents weren't able to be there, Jeremy was the only person she felt she could turn to. She also admitted that over the past few years, she had tried to reconnect with him multiple times, but he always turned her down out of respect for me. She said that deep down, she always believed Jeremy would be there for her if she ever really needed him. That's why she reached out when she got sick. Then she hit me with the part that really messed with my head. She admitted that something did happen between them. They kissed. She told me they had a moment and that they ended up kissing for a couple of minutes. And then, according to her, Jeremy pulled away and told her he couldn't go any further, especially knowing I was pregnant. She framed it like it was this proof of his loyalty, like I should be impressed he stopped after just a kiss. Honestly, I couldn't believe she even said that with a straight face. But the point is, I knew something had been going on. Maybe not in the way I feared, but they were still talking. He never really cut her off like he said he did. And now I have written proof. So yeah, I've already talked to my lawyer, and we've adjusted our petition. We're asking for a little more across the board, because now it's not just about abandonment or emotional neglect. He cheated. And I think I deserve better than to walk away empty-handed after all this. Right now, I feel solid, confident, at peace, even. It's funny, this whole time, I thought the end of my marriage would break me. I thought I'd be terrified. But I've never felt more certain about anything in my life. And I'll keep you all posted as things move along. Thanks for sticking with me through this chaos. It really means more than you know.